The show hosts a mixture of dialogue, comedy, music and discussion on topical issues. Broadcast on Friday nights on the national network, it was viewed by a high percentage of the populace and had the power to influence public opinion on a range of topics, social topics. High-profile guests were kept secret until the broadcast, but it was frequently during studio discussions that national attitudes towards controversial topics became crystallised. The Late Show audience responds to various scandals. Sinead O'Connor ordaining herself as a Catholic priest, R.D. Lang's drunken appearance, Annie Murphy's story about the father of her child being the Catholic Bishop Eamon Casey. These were instrumental in changing attitudes towards sex, gender and race, and charted the loosening grip of church power and the state apparatus. Simultaneously, the Late Late Show remains focused on palatable entertainment, pulling back any progressive ideas to tally with the more conservative, informative attitudes of the day. So, previously on the Late Late Show. Roll it, Peter.
Father, what about sin? Is it a sin? Homosexuality.
I thought you'd ask that one. So you did.
Is it a sin?
You can't say homosexuality as such as a sin, because homosexuality is a term like heterosexuality. Is heterosexuality a sin? I think you have to take the word homosexuality for what it means, and it primarily means a psychosexual attraction, dominant attraction to people of the same sex. So homosexuality as such can't be a sin. Just as heterosexuality as such can't be a sin. So even the official church would support that line.
Well then, where does the sin come in?
The sin comes in when we make wrong moral choices in life. And just as where does sin come in heterosexuality? Sin comes in when we exploit other people, use them for selfish sexual motives. Sin comes in homosexuality in the same way, when we physically use our homosexual tendencies if we are that way. So sin is always connected with human freedom, human action, and it's not connected with who we are in ourselves, because to say homosexuality is a sin is in fact to condemn people before perhaps even they know they're homosexual.
Do you mean you're born like that?
I believe that some people are born homosexual. The scientific community is, in my reading, divided on the origins and causes of homosexuality, whether of men or of women. I'm convinced of some of the evidence which says that part of our sexual orientation is prenatal. Now, some other elements of the scientific community, particularly those from the psychological angle, will say that our sexual condition is much more environmental, type of family upbringing we have, etc. Now, even though I believe that part of our sexual conditioning is prenatal, that doesn't explain all the phenomenon of homosexuality, because even with homosexuals, and over the years I've got to know quite a number of them, there are homosexuals who I think are very immoral people, just as there are heterosexuals who are very immoral people. So I don't want to give the impression by saying that because it's prenatal, therefore, there's no problem. There is problem. But I do think that one of the things that we need to do in the Catholic community is to be a bit dispassionate about this problem. It's obviously an emotional problem, as you're very aware of after this week. What I'm interested in is trying to say, here is a human phenomenon, here is something we need to understand better, to study the causes of it better, and to help people who are of a homosexual condition to genuinely lead moral lives. And I think that's where the problem is, within the Catholic community. It's not on the level of moral teaching or on the level of sin as such, which is pretty well established. I think what the Catholic community needs is much more support for homosexual people in order precisely, you know, to help them understand themselves. And out of that, I think they lead much more moral lives, because in my experience with homosexuals, their biggest need in life, or what they experience as their biggest lack, is not necessarily the lack of sexual expression or sexual experience. Their biggest lack is a lack of self-esteem themselves, and a lack of friendship, and a lack of support.
Thank you,
And
Peter. I just want to read a letter from 1985. It's a handwritten letter that was written into RTE in response to this. It's at the top, it's marked with an asterisk for private consumption, of course. 17th of September 1985. Dear Gay, after Friday night's programme, I felt I just had to get in touch to congratulate you on your expert handling of a delicately sensitive topic. I gathered that you had suffered considerable harassment in the run-up to the show. In my reckoning, the programme would have proved instructive and enlightening to many. I hope you feel consoled and reassured in Eindhoven. I must add that I haven't been equally enthusiastic about some of the late-nights in the past, although I confess I'm not a constant viewer. I'm afraid a very big share of the blame for the abysmal decline in morality in the Irish scene must be attributed to the media in general, and in particular what is being fed into the homes on television. It saddens me then when someone of your background, gifts and calibre, who could do so much to highlight the good and the true and the beautiful, presents a programme which attacks or undermines or pokes fun at Christian values. I hope you appreciate the sincerity with which I write, Kay. Your task is a challenging one. I pray that you continue to provide good, wholesome entertainment that will, in the best sense, renew and recreate your audience. Every good wish. Roland Peter.
Sweet little girl.
The only times that I've been completely and utterly terrified are the 2 times that I've done the Late Late Show.
Why?
Because, not because of you, Gay, I can assure you, but just, I don't know, it's because you
Rushed
grow
over
up
to you.
all your life in Ireland and with the Late Late Show, you know, and Gay Burn and all this, you know, and so it's quite a sort of
If
terrifying.
I only had known, I would have rushed over and held you in my little
Oh, you're
arms.
very good to me the first
I
time.
think Gay Byrne had a little bit of a hot thing for Sinead, and I believe Sinead knew how to manipulate this in the best possible way, of course. Unashamedly, the harlot in Sinead became visible, and she just ran rings around Mr. Byrne.
Sinead was always able to surprise the audience, and sometimes Gay as well.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is injury or pardon.
I don't think there's anything phony about her. I think she actually intends each invention or reinvention of herself as the real Sinead. I don't think she actually does it as a marketing ploy, but it does turn out as great entertainment. But she's like the heroine of Tosca. She lives her life for her art and her love, and it works.
Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring light.
When she sings a song, I mean, it right down to the very choice of song that she chose to sing, it seems to be, you know, from an artist's point of view rather than any sort of cynical, audience-pleasing. She seems to be very true to herself, even sometimes to the point of putting herself out to be attacked. And I think that's very much, you know, that's a real artist.
Beautifully done.
Really beautiful. I've never heard it sung before. I've heard it said before, I've never heard it sung before. There's a girl crying in the audience. Because of you. Okay, we can't follow that. No way of following that, Don. We better leave it. Okay, thank you for joining us. Good night until next week. God bless you. Good night.
Many appearances and many different personae.
My love, what are you at?
My darling.
What are you at?
Well, I am 32 years of age, so don't talk to me like I'm a teenager.
I would argue that as an artist, as a vocalist, as a writer, as a performer, she is one of the greatest artists that we've seen in the last 100 years. Like the best of artists around the world, what she brings to the table is unadulterated soul, unadulterated emotions, be they emotions of celebration and joy, or be they emotions of heartbreak and shipwreck.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Jah Rastafari, Dread Eye.
We wish you well.
Thank you.
Take care and yourself.
Thank you, because it wouldn't happen without you, believe it or not.
So I'm responsible for this
No
too.
way you are too. You're an angel.
Fine. Thank you. There you are. There you are. Thank you today. God bless you.
Sweet little girl.
The only times that I've been
Roll it, Peter.
Now, 11 years. No, I'm not thinking of the condom train. That was 20 years ago. You came through. It wasn't the road.
Would you turn it up there, please, Peter?
11
years ago, it's like television.
11 years ago was 1980. But the condom train, did you start blowing them up like balloons and throwing them out the window? Was it you that started that? Was Mary Kenny?
No, it was Mary who played up the comments.
I see.
I was in charge of
Not
that.
so live.
And all of them.
Apparently half of them they didn't even know what they looked like. They died of embarrassment apparently going in asking for them, and they were terrified their mammies would see them getting off the train.
Yeah.
So I heard anyway.
And Mary Kenny's family wouldn't talk to her the next day after she was on the Late Late Show that night. She wouldn't talk to her. We don't want to mention Mary Kenny, do we? No, sorry. Yeah, Mary Kenny was there.
Very fond of American.
And June Levine.
Yeah.
And June Levine, who gave rise to the great expression when she was working on the Late Late Show. She used to say, God, wouldn't it be great to have a wife? Summed it all up really for me. But I want to remind you of one of your greatest moments now, 11 years ago, on the Late Late Show. It was liberation for women all over this nation as Gay stood up and handed over his seat to Larry. What did you say, holy cow? Who's a holy cow? Oh, it was just an expression.
An expression,
Like we're talking about me again. Roll it there, Roisin, please. This was a moment. Look yourself now. You'll enjoy this. How look down there. Down there. Look down there. There is a sentence. It says, Marion Finucane will never take the Late Late chair, which is supposed to be significant of the way that women are dumbed down. Marion, let's put it down. what happened since then?
Thanks. We'll just have one more clip before we start.
Do you remember Nell 11?
Different one. So there still isn't, not until today, there still isn't a female host of the Late Late Show. Can we roll it again there, Peter? So we have a great line of guests here for you tonight's show.
You are prepared to put out that disgusting
2 weeks after Anna Rayburn's appearance, more controversy.
thing, I've drunk too much or so on.
You drunk too much. I wanted to know.
Or anything at all. What's that got to do with the...
Because it is perfectly obvious to people that you are under the weather and you are slow.
Hey, I'm not under the weather. I'm not under the weather at all. I'm just behaving as I usually behave. I'm not speeding myself up for the cameras or for you.
Nobody wanted you to speed you up, to speed up.
Oh, well, what are you saying to me?
Well,
now?
what I'm saying is that there is an unwritten rule for anybody who is going to appear on television that you don't... What?
Where are you coming from? But if that is your rule.
Yes, it is my rule.
Why does that man be entitled to speak at whatever rate he wishes to speak?
No, I'm not talking about the way he's speaking. I'm talking about the way...
But you're laying out the rules.
The rule is a safeguard.
Well, certainly when I was putting my own show together, I do remember from the Late Show how the audience is such a fantastic resource.
Thank you, Peter. Joining us on tonight's show is the fantastically loquacious Sam Keogh. Sam? Hi, Sam. You're right there. Sit down there beside. You all right?
I am.
It's lovely to have you here.
Well, it's lovely to be here. I was listening to Sinead's video backstage. So I'm a bit nervous.
I understand.
Still settled to nerves, you know. But I would agree with everything Sinead said as regards the Late Show as an institution, and it's really something I've grown up with for many years. I never really liked Gay Byrne. I always thought he was a bit of a prick. But,
right. Getting back to tonight's show, I just introducing this idea of shelter in Ireland and what it might mean and who has had control over what those words mean and how the idea of shelter is kind of borne down through the generations. I wanted to just begin with a little bit from our archives, and as an introduction to that I want to read something from 1963, which is a papal decree. So it's a decree on the media of social communications, inter mirifica, correct in Latin, solemnly promulgated by His Holiness Pope Paul VI on December the 4th, 1963. Number 1. Among the wonderful technological discoveries which men of talent, especially in the present era, have made with God's help, the Church welcomes and promotes with special interest those which have a most direct relationship to men's minds and which have uncovered new avenues of communication, news most readily, news and views and teachings of every sort. The Church recognises that these media, if properly utilised, can be of great service to mankind, since they greatly contribute to men's entertainment and instruction, as well as the spread and support of the Kingdom of God. The Church recognises, too, that men can employ those media contrary to the plan of the Creator and to their own loss. Indeed, the Church experiences maternal grief at the harm all too often done to society by their evil use.
The Church experiences maternal grief.
That's right, it says yes, that's
the
what
Church experiences maternal grief.
Well, the Church would have been known as Mother Church. So it would have, when it experienced grief, they would have described it.
Sorry, pardon my French.
Well, looking back over the arc, roll it there, Peter, please.
There's the straight.
One of the main functions, one of the two main functions of the church is to preach the gospel. In other words, the church is in the communications business and has been from the very beginning. And secondly, that television is the most important and powerful means of communication in the world of today, and is likely to become even more important and more powerful in the future. It's obviously important, therefore, that the church should understand this medium. And briefly, I would say the object of this centre is to train a number of apostolic and committed people within the church who understand this medium and who are able to work with it. And I would see this also, if you like, as a two-way process, not merely that they would learn about television and how to use it, and to understand its overtones, its subtleties, and so on, but also that the church would, through them, learn something about television, learn about the new world, if you like, which television is helping to create.
Is the centre primarily meant for export, as it were, for the foreign mission?
Well, certainly this is a factor of which has a great deal of importance, very much in mind. I would hesitate to say that it's primarily this, but Ireland is obviously a missionary country, and undoubtedly we hope and believe that this centre will help Irish missionaries to carry out their work of preaching the gospel in these countries. Firstly,
There's one there sitting like that.
Hard to say.
Is there another one now?
There's another one we're going to from the archives which looks at, it's entitled Are Nuns Human?
No.
I think they would feel they are. That's what's demonstrated now in the next clip. We'll talk a little bit later on about your experience. So.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Will. Live television.
In Ireland, we tend to take nuns for granted. They've always been here and they always will be here, in convents, in hospitals and in schools. But in fact, nuns haven't always been here. Most Irish convents only came into existence at the end of the penal days, and that's only about 200 years ago. And there's no guarantee that they always will be here. With the decline in vocations today, with the influence of materialism, there's no guarantee that convent life is going to continue as it is at the moment. The whole idea of it is being questioned. Tonight, in the first of two programmes, Raya takes a look at the place and the image of the nun in the Ireland of today.
In the past, nuns have not worried very much about their image. They knew the job they had to do, and they got on with it, to the greater glory of God and for the good of their fellow men. But recently, they have had to become more conscious of their image, not from vanity, but from necessity. If the work they are doing is to continue, they must be able to attract young people into their ranks, young people who see the way nuns work and live, and who like what they see. Today, these young people seem to be coming forward in fewer and fewer numbers. Is it because they no longer like what they see? Or is it because the image of a nun is no longer an attractive or an inspiring one to the girl who is planning her career in life?
It depends on what you consider to be a nun. Because at least if we were to take them here, there's a very wide spread, there's both extremes, and there's very few in between. There's some people who are really them, and yet they're nuns, and yet there's the old fogies, the typical old ones that you've got to get everything out of the Bible and the Holy Book and the Archbishop,
Well, would you like to be a nun?
If I could be me, I would, very much. It interests me because, I think, although a lot of people sort of hold it against nuns, that they're nuns and they've got a little black habit long down to their feet and everything, you can get close to an awful lot more people. And, like here in the cross-section, there's an awful lot of girls, there's so many people in school, that you can meet more and get to know what they're like.
Well, what do you think of nuns in general?
In general, they're a bit queer. I don't really know how you could describe nun. I've heard of definitions, but I don't think they're rather suitable, There's, generally, no, I don't like them.
Is it necessary?
No.
Why not?
Because I think you can do just as much without being tied up in an institution. With one woman up on top of you, one woman saying you can't do this, you can't do that, So.
Well, what changes would you like to see made so in nuns' lives?
I'd like to see the idea of the habit brought far more up to date. I don't like the idea of a long black habit that's just totally irrelevant to life. I mean, who's going to see what's going on to the black veil? Okay, so the frock isn't because they're having so much maxi now, but I mean, the idea of the veil is thoroughly ridiculous.
Most of us first come into contact with a nun on our first day in school. It is a strange and solemn occasion for all concerned. The desks, the schoolroom, the presence of so many children in the same place. And one of the strangest parts of it all is the first close-up look at a nun. Dressed in black from head to foot, she creaks and rustles and clanks alarmingly whenever she moves. And in general, she is one of the most alarming aspects of a pretty alarming day, with her rosary beads and crucifix, her strange veil and headdress, and her heavy black clothes that seem to smell perpetually of a mixture of crayons and chalk.
And open your boxes of crayons. Now, I want you to draw a little nest for me, and draw...
As time passes, of course, the strange becomes familiar. These girls will spend between 10 to 14 years in daily contact with nuns, listening to them, watching them, getting to know the human beings that lie under the black veils and habits. They will find out that nuns are not superwomen, that they have their own individual characters and their own individual faults, that they are capable of meanness and spitefulness and injustice in the same way as anyone else. But they will also see something of the dedication of the life of the nuns, the dedication that has led them to give up material comforts and possessions, to renounce all hope of a home and family of their own. The more thoughtful among them will realize something of the extent to which the world of today is indebted to the sacrifice and devotion of the women in black.
I think some nuns are really marvellous people, and as people they go out and they really do marvellous work. Take the nuns in Biafra, or take any of the nuns that are helping in hospitals and helping people. I think this is very important, and sometimes they can be, I know, a little stuffy and rather old-fashioned, but on the whole I think nuns are pretty good people.
Well, do you think they're really necessary?
Yes, I do. I think they are necessary. I think they fulfil a role in society. It's hard to imagine it, say, in the present day, but where would we be, say, in education, in hospitals or anything, except for nuns? I really think, they've played very important.
Sam, do you have any? You're going to tell us some of your memories.
Well, I was just going to say that my father's first memory of primary school was being lined up in the yard, 4 years old, with his hand out, and he was going to be beaten by a nun, and he didn't understand, he didn't know why, and then it kind of, through the experience of school, it becomes clear. The punishment precedes the sin. They were vicious bastards in many cases, and it was atmosphere, pervasive atmosphere. But my experience, like, I suppose, first confession, as would be similar to many people in the audience, first confession, where you're maybe 6 years old and you go in, you're taught by the teacher what it is, and you're sat down and you're told you have to tell the priest your sin. For the first time, and you'd say, well, what's a sin? Because you're 6.
I know.
And the teacher would say, well, something that has annoyed God. And then you'd say, well, what would that be? And then they'd say, well, if you were bold to your brother or sister, if you annoyed your mother, if you didn't clean your room or whatever, that annoys God. That's a sin. And I said, I can't remember doing any of that lately. And she said to me, it was, well, listen, there's 2 weeks now between now and your first confession, so you should just watch out for it doing something bad, and you should remember it and tell the priest. And the next thing I remember, I was in the line, and the boy ahead of me was coming out of the confession booth, and it was my turn to go in and talk to the priest. And I realised instantly that I had forgotten to remember a sin.
Right.
And I went in and the priest said, what's your sin? And I said, I stole Mars bar from the shop and I ate it and I enjoyed it.
But you hadn't, don't you?
And I hadn't stolen Mars bar. I panicked and I made it up. And he said, 10 Hail Marys and such, and that's your penance, and then you're absolved of your sin and you're in a state of grace. And I came out very pleased with myself. But it hit me then that I had lied to a priest, which is technically a mortal sin, which would send you to hell. And and that was the beginning for me now. I was 6, I didn't have a sin, I forgot to remember a sin, I was guilty that I didn't have a sin, I made up a sin, I felt guilty that I made up the sin, I lied to the priest, I committed a murder, I just dug a hole.
Yeah.
I was 6 and I dug that hole, and I'm still in that hole.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So I'd just like to introduce our next guest this evening, Tina Kinsella, who's a writer and a lecturer in IADT in the School of Creative Studies in IADT in Dublin. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Vaari. A short history of refuge for the women and children of Ireland. Christine Buckley, survivor of Golden Bridge Industrial School, speaking about the Commission to inquire into child abuse known as the Ryan Report 2009. Christine Buckley said, "Well, you've read out shocking headlines there, and all I did was just nod because they are shocking. They're unimaginable, yet they're minuscule. Most of us who went and who have survived institutional abuse, we haven't told it all. You couldn't possibly tell it all, because in doing so, I don't think I would ever recover. And there's so much that is just locked in my brain, and I certainly know with hundreds of others because the public wouldn't be able to stomach it. Yet we were children and babies, and we had to stomach it." Just as Ryan says, the average age of going into these hellholes was 8 years old. Totally incorrect. There was babies turned upside down, beaten to a pulp because they cried. There was babies strapped to potties, and we, as children, were forced to push their rectums up. I went into care at 3 weeks old. I didn't go in 8. Well, we suffered and ate rabbit feces. We now find today the surplus that these abusers were making. The mother and baby homes. Survivor Rosemary Adisa. "My file is peppered with references to my colour," said Rosemary Adisa. "The racism was relentless and brutalising. My formative years were devastated by it. Like other mixed-race Irish children in the mother and baby homes, she was never offered for adoption. She believes this was a policy based on a presumption that nobody would want to adopt a mixed-race baby. Instead, she was fostered or boarded out. When I was 4, I was sent to a couple in their 60s. No, they weren't vetted. They were invited to select a child. People were paid by the state to take in children. This couple had no pension, and I was an income source. The woman was vicious. I have a clear memory of fearing the gardening gloves, because she would go out and cut branches from the rose bushes and cut the flowers off. She called me filthy and nasty and would strip me naked. I was 4, remember, and she would whip me with the thorns. Years later, I still had scars on my back, buttocks, stomach, legs, arms, and soles of my feet, but not my face. The whippings were so bad, I was hospitalised. When Alice was 14, she was attacked by a nun who sexually abused her. A psychiatrist said she needed more freedom from the institutional regime. She started going for long walks and developed a relationship with the young man, the first person who ever showed me love. She became pregnant when she was 16, and although the father wanted to marry her, She was sent to Ardmore Mother and Baby Home in County Meath, where her 21-day-old son was taken from her. Not even my son was my own. I'd been reared to believe I was entitled to nothing. The system had taken the eugenics of British imperialism, and Irish society, the church, had to civilise us. Our Irishness was an inconvenience, and society did not want us. We were the dust of Irish society, to be swept away, never acknowledged as existing. Many still want us and the racism to be airbrushed away. The Magdalen Laundries. The Magdalen Laundries, also known as Magdalen Asylums, another name for places of refuge, were institutions which operated from the 18th to the late 20th centuries. These institutions housed so-called fallen women, which is a term to imply female sexual promiscuity or work in prostitution. However, many of the women housed in these institutions were there simply because they were unmarried mothers. Effectively, these laundries operated as workhouses, washing the dirty linen of everyday society. The last Irish Magdalen laundry finished operating in 1996. The institutions were named after the biblical figure Mary of Magdalene, who is often portrayed as a reformed prostitute. I think we may have a clip now.
Thank you, Paula. Peter.
Yes, I want to know what inspired Magdalen Laundries.
Oh, well, I live in British Columbia as much as I possibly can. Because I'm absent, sometimes I have a man named Hans he and his family caretake my place. And Hans, sucking on his pipe, said to me one day, "You know, Joni, you're basically a cheerful person, but you write these melancholy songs." He said, "Seems to me that you should write more in the daylight. You're always writing at night." So I sat out in the sun on a rock and I tuned my guitar to the sound of that day, because I play in open tunings like ragas. So I tuned to the crows and the seagulls and the sonic references available. And it was a fairly cheerful chord progression. You know, well, a little melancholy in it, because beauty has little. But anyway, I intended to write quite a cheery lyric to it. Well, I went to the supermarket to get my groceries, and standing in the line between the Inquirer and the Star was the Vancouver Sun. And I never bought a paper in my life. What possessed me, I don't know, but I picked this paper up and I never got past the first page. To the left hand of the page was a story out of Ireland, that the Sisters of Our Lady of Charity outside of Dublin, which was a nunnery, had sold 11.5 acres to realtors. The realtors, in ploughing this land for development, unearthed over 100 bodies in unmarked graves, thus opening up a scandal that had rocked Dublin from, they said, 1800 to 1970. These laundries were closed. Basically, the Magdalen Laundries, which stood outside of, there was every major Irish town and maybe some minor ones, took as slave labor fallen women. Fallen women were classified as the obvious, I guess, prostitutes, unmarried mothers, frequently impregnated by their parish priest, their father, their brother. But the worst of all was that an unmarried woman in her late 20s, if the men of the village were looking at her, she could be deemed a Jezebel by the parishioners and even her own family for her indecisiveness in choosing a mate, and incarcerated for life, or at least until somebody managed to get her out of there. This was cheap labor. Dickensian conditions was the way it was described. Well, you know, there went my cheerful song. So, I mean, this is the story of the Magdalen Laundries. I was an unmarried girl. I just turned 27 when they sent me to the sisters for the way men looked at me. Branded as a Jezebel, I knew I was not bound for heaven. I'd be cast in shame into the Magdalene laundries. Most girls come here pregnant, some by their own fathers. Bridget got that belly by her parish priest. We're trying to get things white as snow, all of us woe-begotten daughters, in the steaming stains of the Magdalene laundries. Prostitutes and destitutes and temptresses like me, fallen women sentenced into dreamless drudgery. Why do they call this heartless place Our Lady of Charity? Oh, charity. These bloodless brides of Jesus, if they had just once glimpsed their groom, then they'd know. And they'd drop those stones concealed behind their rosaries. They wilt the grass they walk upon, they leech the light out of a room. They'd like to drive us down the drain at the Magdalene laundries. Peg O'Connell died today. She was a cheeky girl, a flirt. They just stuffed her in a hole. Surely to God you'd think at least some bells should ring. One day I'm gonna die here too, and they'll plant me in the dirt like some lame bulb that never blooms come any spring. No, not any spring. Not any spring, not any spring, not any spring, not any spring.
Symphysiotomy. Symphysiotomy is a surgical procedure performed during obstructed childbirth, during which the cartilage of the pubic symphysis is quite literally sawn in half to widen the pelvis, allowing childbirth to proceed. It is estimated that 1,500 women, unknowingly and without their consent, had this surgical procedure performed on them between 1944 and 1984 in Ireland. Often this procedure was performed as an alternative to a caesarean section so that women could continue to give birth to more children. In 2002, symphysiotomy survivor Matilda Behan and her daughter Bernadette set up an advocacy group for victims called Survivors of Symphysiotomy. Matilda was operated upon at the National Maternity Hospital with a circular saw 17 days before her baby was born. She thought she was being brought into theatre for a caesarean section. No one told her the plan to do the new procedure. The Tuam babies. In a report in the Irish Times on Monday, March the 6th, 2017, entitled Tuam Babies, Magdalene Survivors Call for Identification of Children, it was reported that the state must help identify every woman and child who died at all Magdalene laundries and mother and baby homes. The government has not said whether a full excavation will take place at the former grounds of the mother and baby home in Tuam, County Galway, where a commission of inquiry looking into the religious-run homes for unmarried mothers has found the remains of a significant number of children aged under 3. Calling for a wider investigation, the Justice for Magdalene's research group said it had compiled a list of 180 institutions, agencies and individuals charged with the care of unmarried mothers and their children. It also appealed for a halt to plans to redevelop 2 former Magdalene laundries in Dublin until it could be established that neither site contained children's graves.
Sorry, Tina, interruption. Do you know the Sinead O'Connor song and the videos? Her face is, she's crying on this video. Nothing compares to you. It's the name of the song.
Yeah.
It's, all the flowers that you planted, Mama, in the backyard, they've all died and they're withered away. I know that living with me, baby.
Thank you, Sam. Tina, what is the situation currently?
Thanks, Vaari. The new National Maternity Hospital. Currently there are plans afoot to build a new National Maternity Hospital in Dublin. It has been proposed that this new facility will be built on the land of the Sisters of Charity, one of the religious groups that previously ran the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. This would mean that this religious group and the Catholic ethos it subscribes to own the maternal healthcare facility and have a substantial impact on its governance. Currently, the government has provided no copper-fastened assurance that this facility will provide all the maternal and reproductive healthcare services that are currently legal within the state, a state that is still subject to the 8th Amendment. We continue to resist this state of affairs. We ask you for your help and support to fight our cause.
What can we do, Tina, to fight the cause?
An alternative imaginary of refuge. Simone de Beauvoir recounts how she couldn't bear her mother's tears, which she understood as a sign of maternal failure. But when her mother is in hospital dying, Beauvoir relinquished into her own tears. With despair escaping beyond her control, Beauvoir realised that someone other than myself was weeping in me. I talked to Sartre about my mother's mouth, as that I'd seen it that morning, and about everything I had interpreted in it: greediness refused, an almost servile humility, hope, distress, loneliness, the loneliness of her death and her life that did not want to admit its existence. And he told me that my own mouth was not obeying me anymore. I had put Maman's mouth on my own face in spite of myself. I copied its movements. Her whole person, her whole being was concentrated there, and compassion wrung my heart. In her book Touching Feeling, Eve Sedgwick describes a photograph of the textile artist Judith Scott embracing one of her massive fibre works. Woven from multicoloured yarns and often resembling totem poles or metamorphosizing body parts, this particular photograph Scott's work, in this particular photograph, Scott's work resembles a cocoon. The artist's face is plunged into the belly of the egg-like structure. Her arms are wrapped around it, and her hands loosely grasp it. Cedric writes that Scott and her creation here present themselves to one another with equally expansive welcome. Through their closeness, the sense of sight is seen to dissolve in favour of that of touch. Not only the artist's hands and bare forearms, but her face are busy with the transaction of texture. The artist and the work evoke a besidedness, a tenderness, an ontological relationality as a sensibility emerging from hands, from touch. Silk work, turning fabric into other fabric, childhood blanket with the satin binding, skin hunger, how hungry our skin was for touch, treasure scraps on silk. Somehow, the silk and the shit go together, the waste products, spinning straw into gold. In her short novel Herland, written in 1915, American sociologist, activist and feminist Charlotte Perkins Gilman offers a utopian vision of a woman-only society of mothers which is not submitted to the paternal law, but which instead has developed to be peaceful, orderly and efficient cooperative community, a society in which competition, crime and antisocial behaviour are unknown. In Herland, the education of future generations is understood as emancipation, a means by which to create a nurturing and humane social environment. Whilst childbearing is considered the greatest honour of the women's lives, the women of Herland do not raise their children alone but communally, as an organic community that produces a social mesh in pursuit of a common good, where property is held in common based on a loose system of authority founded in experience and wisdom, where the well-being and education of children are the highest priorities. As the narrator of this short novel, Van Dyke Jennings, observes, the inhabitants of Herland had no theory of the essential opposition of good and evil. Life to them was growth. Their pleasure was in growing, and their duty also. The home, Perkins Gilman suggested, could also be a microcosm for a peaceful and just society, a place where groups of men and groups of women could live together. In this way, the home is considered as a communal space, a space of the commons which could provide an integrated vision for a new community structure in close, direct, permanent connection with the needs and uses of society. All mothers in that land were holy. Every one woman of them placed motherhood not only higher than other duties, but so far higher that there were no other duties, one might almost say. All their wide mutual love, all the subtle interplay of mutual friendship and service, the urge of progressive thought and invention, the deepest emotion, every feeling and every act was related to this great central power, to the river of life pouring through them. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
My grandmother was widowed at her early 30s, and at that stage she had 5 daughters. And my mother was the second eldest, and they had a cat, and it was pregnant with kittens. And when my mother and her sisters were away at school, the cat gave birth to these kittens, and my grandmother said, I've got 5 girls to raise on my own. I can't feed 10 cats or however many kittens come out of a cat. And she said, and she did what was done then, which was put the kittens in a pillowcase, and with the intention of drowning them in the bath. And what she did, God bless her, was she ran a bath with lukewarm water to not distress the kittens as they were drowning or something. And she put the pillowcase in the bath, and of course the screams came out of the bag, and she panicked and she burst into tears. And the scene that my mother and her sisters walked in on when they came back from school was my grandmother crying in front of the fire with 10 kittens in a towel, drying these kittens in front of the fire, and they had 11 cats then. And it's just
Thank you, Sam. Our next guest arrived to Ireland in 2013 from South Africa seeking political asylum. Just to give some context previously to there's some historical reports that we have from the RTE archives on refugees arriving in Ireland. Can you roll it there, Peter, please?
When we left the area last night, several premises in the area were in flames. Premises belonged to Catholic businessmen, private houses, and the number of the local men in the area decided to move the women and children and elderly people out. And when they were being put into the vans and private cars, which was to take them into another district for safety, they were being sniped on from the top of a local mill. And at one stage, when loading the people into the van, the women and children were forced to lie flat in the middle of the street, and some of them had to crawl up the street on their stomachs to get into the vans. The police made no attempt whatsoever to remove the sniper, and at one stage the sniper was actually pointed out to them, and the reply was, well, we can't do very much about it.
Well, your wife was expecting a baby.
She was. She was indeed. The baby was due last Friday, and she was due to go into hospital this morning actually. If it hadn't arrived by today, she was due to be taken into the hospital anyway.
Were these regular police?
Those were regular police. Regular police. And when my wife was one of the last to leave, and at the corner of one of the streets, she picked up this shell here, a 9mm shell, yes, which was one used in the sniping. And they were very, very fortunate to get out, and even when they were put up into a refuge centre in Belfast, they were sniped, the building itself was sniped on right through the night.
We have an old folks club which was purchased 3 years ago and reconstructed and opened by the Minister for Health in January of 1969 as a recreational premises for old folk in the town area.
And how many people can you hold in the premises?
As a recreational premises, we can cater for up to 140 people at a sit-down meal such as the annual Old Folks Christmas dinner.
How many refugees can you keep here?
It wasn't a residential premises, but on this occasion we used it on Saturday night to house 2 families. One family of a mother and 9 children, and a husband and wife and 4 children, whom at a late hour we were not able to obtain accommodation for in the town area. We had already obtained accommodation at, I might say, a moment's notice for 7 other families and an elderly couple.
Are you getting much local support?
The support from the local population of Mullingar is absolutely overwhelming.
The PSAs came round and we went out, the young lads told us that the PSAs were coming in, and we went out to sort of defend our homes, and the police stood at the top of the street, and they told us to get in, and when we told them we were going to fight, They threw bottles down the street at us and we had to get into the houses, and they let the police heads come round the houses, and they burned all the houses. They burned the houses and wrecked the houses and threw petrol bombs, and they stood and watched the houses burning down. And where there was once homes, there's nothing only sparkle. There's nothing only sparkle.
Were the police here at this time?
Yes, the police were in, and they let them come in on it.
These were the specialists?
I don't know what they were, we couldn't say what they were. They were uniformed and civilians and everything, and they just come in on us, and they let them come in, and they wrecked and they destroyed people's homes, and they broke them up.
Your husband is still in Belfast?
My husband's still in Belfast, yes.
Was he engaged in this struggle with the police?
No, he wasn't. He was in his brother-in-law's house, and when he seen the police throwing bottles, he ran to help us. There's no video of it. The Vietnamese folk people.
This is their first full day in Ireland. Have you had some chance to sleep?
Yeah, very good. We have a very good sleep because we have 20 hours. We don't sleep too much in the airplane. So we arrive here, so everybody very tired. We have a very good sleep last night.
Rất âm thừa 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 đi quy ca ác ta hồi nha. Có rồi đi về đi. Không thấy nghe nên là tôi cũng nhớ. Quay rồi này. Đứng đây ra đây không quay xuống ngoài. Ra đi, chạy ra để đọc vào với quả bóng.
So, just introducing Lucky Khombule.
Right, thank you, Vaari. Good afternoon, everybody. Today I just want to share the current situation of the living conditions and the system called direct provision in Ireland, which talks to what we have just seen earlier. Peter, if you can just help with the slides there, please. But firstly, before I go to the actual system, I just want to explain to people what the life of a refugee and how a journey of a refugee is. You know, a refugee's life changes just like that. You would be living a normal life as a human being, or as a mother, or as a wife, or as a child, until one thing happens that changes your life. When your life is at risk, the only thing that matters to you is for your safety. You run. A refugee is someone that flees conflict or persecution as it defined by the international law, and according to the law, a person that flees persecution must not be expelled or returned to the country where he or she is running from. The proper definition is when there is a well-founded fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, membership of a certain social group. That's what the definition of the refugee. Next one, Peter. Half the time, when you are running away for your safety, you don't really have time to pick up the things that are of value to you. If you have a child, the only thing that is on your head is to just protect that child and go. And the chances that you leave everything. If you have a phone, maybe that's probably the main thing that you will keep or take with you for communication and knowing where you're going. And half the time you don't even know where you're going to go because you're running for safety. You depend on others to show you a way. In my situation, for instance, I came here in 2013 and I also had to run due to political problems at that time in my province called KZN, which is very, very politically violent and volatile. The next one, slide there. Sometimes when you run, as I said, you don't know where you're going to land. You find yourself in a camp where you don't even know how long you're going to be in that camp. If it's raining, if it's cold, you are just there. And you are just happy to be there at that time for a temporal period because you would now maybe safer from where you were. But you are still in transit. When you move away from when papers, whatever that is arranged, remember, you don't know where you're going. All is arranged for you. Then you'll end up in any country. But I'll take an example of if you land up in Ireland. What happens when you end up in Ireland? When you are in Ireland, you apply for the next one there is Peter. You apply for asylum. You are called an asylum seeker. It's a national system where people now have to avail themselves. Once you have availed yourself to the official that now I am seeking for protection, then you are called an asylum seeker. So you are documented in that country where you are, and you become an asylum seeker. There is a lot of mass movements due to refugee movement, conflicts and violence that cause people to move all around. Ireland has got their own system that is in place, which is called direct provision. Last year, Ireland accepted 2,200 applicants, not processed, but accepted the applications. So they received 2,200 as new applications last year. And how does the system work? The next one there, please, Peter. How does the system work in Ireland? As I said, once you are in Ireland, then you apply to be an asylum seeker, then your identity is taken away from you. That is, you submit everything, marriage, ID, whatever, if you have. Then you are not allowed to work while your application is being processed. You do not have proper access to third level education. You are no longer allowed to leave the country while your application is being processed. Then you are given an allowance of 1910 per week, and then you are housed in hostels whereby you are provided food and bed, and that's it. The direct provision system, the next one, Peter, please. The direct provision system in Ireland was introduced in 2000. It's 17 years old now. This was due to the increase of migrants or applicants from the late 90s to early 2000. And they introduced this system because the numbers were from suddenly 400, they went up to 10,000 for 1 year. So they had to respond to that, and the only thing that they put was direct provision, which was then at that time, they said it's a temporal measure for 6 months. People will be in this system for 6 months, and then they'll be able to move on. So that's what people knew the system to be. But that really didn't materialize. People are then marginalized as asylum seekers and felt powerless. And there was lack of movement. Once you are in these centers, we have no choice of where to live. Once you are allocated a place, this is where you will live, and we have got no choice. We have got no choice of what to eat. You are just given times. These are the times that you must come and take your meals and take what you are given. And also, the length of time was something that was, it is something that is kind of, if I put it this way, the downside of direct provision is the length of time, because now it means that yes, they said 6 months, but people stayed there for more than 10 years. 10 years and more. Children born there. Remember, you don't have a right to work, and that's all loneliness. People eat, sleep every day. So if you live in direct provision, you have no reason to look to what you're going to do tomorrow. There's no reason for you to wake up the following morning. The only time you wake up from your bed is when you go to the dining to get your food. And that's the routine every day. And it becomes a norm until such time you think that it's a normal life. The next one, Peter, there. There are 32 centers throughout the country now. There were 35 last year, but currently there are 32 active centers throughout the country, isolated, and they are in the middle of nowhere. People cannot even reach that. And this is a deliberate ploy, we feel, to separate the group of asylum seekers away from the general public. And this makes integration to be impossible. an Irish person is not even allowed to go to those centers, even for a visit. The question that they ask, why are you here? Because we feel, in fact, it's obvious that they are hiding a lot of things that they don't want people to see and report about, let alone journalists to come even closer there. Even the solicitors can't meet their clients inside the center. They are not allowed. It's made to be so difficult because they are trying to, there's a term that they use which is a pull factor. They say if they could make it a little bit, lucrative, it will be a pull factor. It will attract people to come to Ireland. And that's what they believe. And as I said, the stats are there to say what's happening. The next one there. There was a group that was formed about 3 years ago in 2014 called Working Group. It's a group that was put together by the minister, the current minister, to look into ways and means to improve the system called direct provision. And they were retired government officials, judges, current government officials, the members of the NGOs, the mainstream NGOs in Ireland. And one thing that left in that group was the proper representation of the asylum seekers themselves. We felt that it was important for us as asylum seekers to be part of that process as we live in these centers. So, but all the calls that we tried to be there were not really accepted, and all they were talking about is to reform the system, But we felt as asylum seekers there was no way that we can reform the system because it has been there for the past 15 years at that time, and we felt that there is no way that we can reform it. We needed an investigation to look into the alternatives of this system, or even go back to the system before the direct provision came to place, where people could be able to work and live a normal life and integrate society. So, but they refused to do that. Even the terms and references which the minister imposed on those people that were doing the investigations was that you don't touch the alternative to direct provision. Look into the improvements. And nothing happened. Yes, there were recommendations and a lot of recommendations, but nothing happened. Still, people are living in cramped rooms, living in families sharing one room, husband and wife and children. There's no privacy. There's no intimacy between couples because the children are here. You find rooms, single people will share a room, 4 beds in one room. There is no care about who stays with who. Put everybody together, fight your way to solve your problems. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your religious beliefs are. You just put together. The one thing that struck me when I came to the center, because I left Dublin, a reception center, then I was moved to Keogh at a place called Kinsella Road Accommodation Center. The first thing that struck me when I got there, we were a group of people. We were put in a room, kind of a boardroom, kind of a room. So they put all the towels and toiletries according to the numbers they were expecting. And there was this man that came, kind of a headmaster from school, giving you rules, what you must, how you must behave and all that. That was his way of accepting. And one of the things that were given was this document. This document is a 45 pages document, and it's called House Rules. Those are the first things that were given to us in order for us to make sure that we abide by these rules. I will ask Vaari to just share these with you.
Yeah, there's one for everyone in the audience. Thanks, Lucky.
When I look into these rules, I look into a form of just keeping us down, oppressing us. Because it's when, remember, as an asylum applicant, the only thing that matters to you is your application. So when somebody threatens you that if you do this, your application will be in jeopardy. So you are bound to be quiet and follow these rules. But now, when it's continuing for so many years, how can you really say this is okay? There was one about not being able to, you can't speak up, you can't, if you speak up, you will be transferred, or you can be deported, or your case can be withdrawn. Visitations, you must be at the center at all times. Signing, that's one thing that I hated, because it reminded me of high school or in prison, where you have to sign every day. There's somebody that is sitting there every day, marking a pen. Go and say present, 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 present. We're all grown-ups. So, and was another rule as well on food, for instance. You are not to cook in your room or anywhere in the center. It's one of 13.1 something. You are not to cook. If you are found to be cooking, they will take whether your pot or your stove. I remember one lady, a Congolese lady, was cooking for her children because the food anyway was really terrible. Would find a way to cook. The lady took the chicken and put it in the dustbin in front of the resident. So that's how demeaning, that situation is. The children are born there. There's a lady whose son celebrated 10 years, and she tried to make a birthday within the center. Well, she did. The 10th birthday of her son, and that son was born in that direct provision center. It's something that pains me every time I think about direct provision. That child was born there, celebrated 10 years of his life confined in that direct provision. The intimidation we suffered from the staff, the humiliation, you complain, go back to your country. There's no sense of protection. It's evictions. I have just 3 examples to quote to you. That's really stick with me. There's a woman that gave birth, went to the hospital in a county, Monaghan. When she wanted to come back from hospital to the center, they refused to give her transport from town to the center. She had to carry the baby and walk distance with the baby, having given birth, ladies know what I'm talking about, and back to the center. In that same center this year, a lady gave birth in her room in the hostel. They refused to act urgently on the need for transport. She ended up from Pakistan giving birth at the center. They don't want people to hear about those things. There was another lady as well who had 2 babies. One was at that time 3 months, she was breastfeeding, and the other one was just over a year. Just because there was a misunderstanding or a disagreement between her and the server. On that day, they were serving burgers. It was on a Saturday, and she wanted an extra burger, and they refused. And she, instead of going on with the argument, she just grabbed the burger and go. And what happened was that in the following morning, the management issued a letter to her, barring her from coming to the dining. So they said, if you want to have food, you send your friends. And she said, I didn't come here with friends. I only have my kids. And they starved her for 10 days. And after that, they tried to force her out of the center. But we got to know about that. We helped to force them to not to evict her. Breastfeeding, remember that. Most recently, the food that is supplied in one of the centers, which has a shop now, they give people expired, 2 months expired food. So that's direct provision in Ireland. It's if you go to the next one there, please, Peter. These centers are run by private companies who make millions and millions of euros every month to look after us, or so to speak. But there is one thing that people must realize, is that the owners have put away the human factor, that there are humans or human beings that are in these centers. They only worry about what comes to the bottom line at the end of the day. The figures are there for everyone to see. This is the reality. The next one there. As I said, the challenges of lack of activity, sometimes as there are the kids from primary and secondary can go to school, but there are challenges that the kids are facing, especially when there are trips that will go abroad. So the child who is in direct provision cannot travel with the class, and it frustrates the kids. As I said, the rooms really small. And now I'm going to talk about this the International Protection Act. I will talk about that quickly. The next one there. What happens is that people are scared in these direct provisions to speak up. And they are scared to close these centers because they are fearing of their job security. But our lives are in limbo. It's deliberate. It's a profit making. The longer we stay in this cage, the more they make money. But there's one thing that we believe that it's important for us to do as well. Instead of waiting for history to define what happened in direct provision, we took it upon ourselves to come to a level of being able to speak up and speak about these things and protest about the conditions. In Keogh, in the center where I was, we staged a lockout which lasted for 10 days while we were negotiating the conditions to improve in the center. Things that were within their control, not the policies, but things, living conditions. We had to fight for our rights. We have to make people believe that it's something that they can do. Remember, there's fear, but we have to energize people to say it's your right. We have to stand up for ourselves in order for us to see a change. We did that very, very successfully. Most or all of our demands, actually, the local demands were met. All of them, including the children's playroom that was installed, the bus transport for kids to school was, to just mention a few. Obviously, this didn't go well with them, with the staff, because remember, for 10 days, they could not access what they used to go to for more than 15 years. One of the managers, the main manager, who was really, really racist, if I can put it in that way, one of our demands was that it must not return. Otherwise, there will be trouble. Of which that was that demand as well, because they feared. We were really, really together, and they feared us when we are together. It's one thing that I always say also when I speak to the colleagues, that there is one thing that we are ruled with, which is fear. And fear is a weapon of despair that is used by those that fear the people. So if we overcome fear within ourselves, we can see the victory and we can carry on. That's what keeps us going. From then, we carry on with talking about these issues. The next one there is just a picture of the next one there, Peter, please. It's just an indication of what we did with the kids. Carry on, the next one. Next. Yeah, that one there. That's when we decided to lock the gates. We were standing. That is the only entrance. Sometimes they make one entrance. They forget that same one entrance is one we can use against them. So we just know, because if we have one entrance, we know that they can't come to anyway. So we block there, and they were not allowed. Once they see us together there, 300. That center had 300 people, including kids. All were standing there. And some of them didn't even come close to where we were. Right, the next one, quickly. The current, one of the challenges that we have now, they implemented what we said, the International Protection Act, which is aimed, they say, at fast-tracking these applications. But it came with a lot of problems. 60 pages long application forms people need to resubmit with a deadline of 20 days. We challenged this as well as asylum seeker to say this is practically impossible. There was no way that, we get to the solicitors to get the legal advice on this new application form and this new act within 20 days, which they're imposing on us. So, but we managed to twist them as far as that is concerned. Until currently, there is no deadline. So once you receive that form, you must make sure that it's correctly completed to your satisfaction. Can you skip the next one? Go to the picture. Skip that one. We'll come back to that one there. This drawing you see is a 7-year-old. I'll show you 3. These are 7-year-old kids living in direct provision, having their own idea of what an ideal home is supposed to be. Remember, they stay in a hostel kind of a situation. Some of them have never even seen a home. We ask them to just draw a typical home. You can see. They see a home with the rooms that they can have, bathrooms, kitchen, sitting room, a full house. Already they have the idea of how a full house is supposed to be. It must have a yard, it must have a lawn where they can go and play, which is something they don't have in direct provision. The next one as well drew this picture. The next one there, Jamil is the name. That is the idea of a home that has got love, that has got happiness, and there's some now and then there's party, you know, there's kindness, and also there's lawn, there's skies are blue, you know. That is the kind of idea they have about the life they want to see happening. The next one, also, 7-year-old. This one has given her house number 21. She wants to live at a house where she can say, this is my parents' house, it's got house number 21. It's got everything, pavement, windows, chimney, so it's homely. You can just see. You know, when I saw this from the kids, and I said, yeah, we are doing a lot to damage these children in direct provision. Can you go back 4 slides back, please? Yeah, there. You are okay. Ours is very simple. Ours, as asylum seekers, is very, very simple. The demand is just, you end direct provision, you give us the right to work, the right to third-level education. We are saying no to reform, no to deportations, and faster processing of asylum applications, not this 5-year, 10-year period we are facing. No to single application procedure, because it leads to faster deportations and they are scanning the applications. And we want residency for all. Those are the simple demands that people who are living in direct provision ask. As I sit down, the last slide there, please, Peter, the last one. There are things that we do, there are projects that we do, which the next speaker is going to touch on very, very strongly, which we are also part of it, is our table. We believe that families discuss issues within table. It's table, food, that brings people together. That's where you start talking. You open the debate. You bring in ideas. You bring in opportunities over food. That's a project that we are part of it, that we feel there is something that we can do together in unity with the Irish people, joining hands to do things one. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Lucky. Thank you very much, Lucky.
There are places really that have replaced the Magdalen laundries and reform schools geographically where they would be outside town. direct provision, as I understand it. And Irish people have they're very good at ignoring things, and they're very good at humouring power.
What do you mean by humouring power?
Well, they're good at their attitude to power is they understand what power wants to hear. Mm-hmm. They tell the power what it wants to hear, and they do their own thing on the side. And you can do what you want now as long as you confess tomorrow, kind of thing. And that's the situation under the British, and under the Church, and then recently, arguably, under the IMF and the Troika. Mm-hmm. And it's grand. I mean, this is the word. It's grand. It's always grand. It's always kicked down the road. And it's not grand because it doesn't do anything to the. It doesn't do anything to the fact that the power exists in the first place. But it just lets it continue to go on. Mm-hmm. But my dad is a good way of doing it. He is, when the politicians come around to the door of Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or whoever his right-wing politicians would be, he'll humour them. Right. And he'll get them and he'll talk to them for over an hour. Pretending. A filibuster. A filibuster, yeah. Pretending to be interested, pretending to be listening. And his attitude is, as long as you're listening to them, as long as you have them, they're not talking to anybody else, and they're not convincing anybody else. And then at the end, if he gets the notion that these people understand that he's, playing this trick, he'll say, I don't intend to vote for you, you prick, I'm a communist.
I want to welcome someone who's worked very closely with Lucky on highlighting and ameliorating the particular situation in relation to asylum seekers in direct provision, chef and writer Michelle Darmody. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for inviting me to the Late Night Show. I never thought I'd be on the stage. I just want to talk firstly about my interest in food and why food for me became a connector and a conversation starter with different people, and particularly with this table, with this project, Our Table. I'm a food writer. I run a food business in Dublin, or I have done for the last 10.5 years. And I've always used that space around the sharing and cooking of food to create other projects and create things that interest me, and always bringing people in, I suppose, and using that space to share. And I'm very interested in that food can create empathy between, I think, any people with any language, and it breaks down so many barriers and creates so many conversations. And I went to a talk by Claudia Wilden, a beautiful food writer, last weekend, and she was talking about how a saucepan can hold history. And I think a saucepan can also hold the present, it can hold your culture, it can hold so many things about a person in one meal that they cook and they share, and it's how you can share that with people across all countries. And the idea of empathy through food and using of food to break down, sorry, roll it there, Roisin. The next slide there, please. So just the idea that empathy can definitely be brought out in people and can be thought and can be learnt through the sharing of food around a table in a family. I mean, I was very lucky to grow up with a family, and food our sitting around a table together was imperative, and we weren't allowed leave for school in the morning until we all sat down and had breakfast together. I had 5 siblings, so we all had to sit down every day, and just that interaction, that communication, built a very strong family bond between all of us. And Our Table was somewhere people were welcome to constantly, all our neighbours, our friends. There was always people in and out of the house, so I was really, really lucky to have that growing up, and I've always tried to keep that within my life since, and in my work and what I have done. So can we have the next slide, please? So the idea for using food to open conversations, to break down barriers, to create a connect, through what we do and how we do it. Can I have the next slide, please? So just using the idea of the table, as Lucky mentioned earlier, not just for eating, but for conversation, for education, for learning. Most people in Ireland, I know, will be doing their homework around the table. You'll be teaching your family, you know, your culture, your traditions are shared around the table. So that became the starting point for an idea. Can I have the next slide, please? So I had heard about the direct provision system and was mortified, for want of a better word, that this was being done in my name, by my government, in my country. And the idea that it was also a money-making system really got to my core. People come looking for asylum, looking for shelter, and in their time of need, we create revenue to feed people who, in my eyes, don't deserve to be making money. Nobody should be making money, but particularly the system that's been set up does not deserve to be making profit out of other people's sadness and misery and calls for help. So I'd heard about direct provision and it upset me, it annoyed me, and I was trying to figure out how I can bring the idea of the sharing of food and how I can use that in some way to help, to highlight. I didn't really know, to be honest, at the beginning what, but I rang the Irish Refugee Council. I figured they were a good starting point, and I was talking to a lady there called Sue and then Caroline, and I just said, hi, my name is Michelle, I'd like to try and do something, and can we have a conversation? So they introduced me to a few people, but particularly, can I have the next slide, please? And they particularly introduced me to a lady, Ellie Kisombe, and Ellie there's a few pictures of Ellie coming up soon. And unfortunately, I actually feel a bit strange having Ellie not here at a talk, because we are generally we would talk together, and we were doing a talk together last weekend. Unfortunately, Ellie is still seeking asylum. She's still in direct provision, and she's going on her 8th year now, so she can't travel and she can't be here. But that in itself, I think, just highlights the kind of shocking 8 years later, a lady who could probably rule our country very well is stuck in a limbo, just cannot work, cannot travel, cannot create her own food. And Ellie and myself, I suppose, began a conversation, and it started off very simple. We just bought vegetables, mainly vegetables, some fish, some cooking ingredients. I borrowed a kitchen from a friend of mine, and we just cooked. We just, ladies from direct provision, mainly some men, so they come along, but mainly women from direct provision. We were just invited along, citizens, an afternoon, we'll see what happens, we'll cook. So we cooked together, we chopped, we shared recipes, we talked, we shared tears sometimes. It was quite an emotive, quite emotive for me to learn stories, quite emotive for people who hadn't had the opportunity to chop vegetables, fry an onion, to make recipes from home and to make recipes with other people in a very long time. So that just became a starting point. And we did that, you know, on maybe every 2 months for a good 6 or 8 months, and just chatted and talked and shared recipes. And for me, the idea of building awareness was always key. I write in the media, and I really, can I have the next slide, please? Sorry, that's our logo. Can I have the next one again, please? So these are the cooking days. Sorry, and another one. Oh yeah, here's some images. There's Ellie in the centre, Lucky. And these are kind of one of the kitchens that we borrowed and we did some cooking in. Can I have the next slide, please? So these are some of the ingredients that I got to learn lots about. Can I have the next slide, please? So then we were all chatting, and again the awareness thing was kind of important to me, to let the wider public know. And this was over 2 years ago now, and I think in the intervening 2 years people may recognise the words direct provision much more than they did then. So I really wanted to let people know and to use the media, and in a way I really wanted to manipulate the media as much as we could. I suppose I know from working out what sells, what story you can use, and food and a personal story is always going to garner attention much more than a sadder story, which should be featured, and the stories and the histories of direct provision could be quite ignored by the media. But whereas we could create this really good, positive recipe sharing, good like food sharing ideas and personal stories, and the media, we use the media to highlight that, and to have people on a Saturday morning in Kerry or in Donegal or different parts of Ireland to open their Saturday newspaper and to read about direct provision and inadvertently get into their way, get into the media without them even, I suppose, knowing in a way our aim and our objective. So the next slide, please. So yeah, sorry, this is just some examples. The next slide, please. So then, in doing that, we wanted to create a more public event and to use that event to invite people to come along, to eat the food that was cooked, and to open a conversation and to open that awareness and to get the media in, get some images taken, and use that to create an awareness and to create a conversation that people could come. And I think we opened the floodgates a little bit. This was the first restaurant, daytime, I'm not sure, a cafe I suppose that we did, and we just did it for 2 days because we didn't really know how it would go, and we had over 300 people came through the door each day. We were completely overwhelmed, and there's another 2 slides I think there of this same event if you want to kind of go through. So this was how we just set up. We just set up a big table, the food was served, there's a donation box there, and people could come, chat, sit around a table. Can we just get one more, I think we have? Yeah, this is the same kind of queue. But then the big tables were set up and they're really communal, and everyone sat together, chatted together, talked together, people helped serve the food, people helped cook the food. And it was really open. It was like, come along if you wanted to, cook if you wanted to, chat if you wanted to. And it was, I found for the wider Irish public, it became a really good starting point for conversation because people felt like they wanted to show this empathy, they wanted to show solidarity, and you didn't know how because it's very hard to get into direct provision centre, it's almost impossible. And the system is set up so there's very little integration because it's 19.10 a week. If you know what Dublin bus fares are like, or Irish bus fares, even to get into a city and back out again, half your 19.10 is gone. Most people I know spend that 19.10 on phone credit to ring family that they've left behind or family that they have in other parts of the country, in Ireland. So the idea that 19.10, you cannot go into a regular cafe generally, you cannot go into a normal restaurant, and just meet Irish people. It's almost, those barriers are set up and they're very, very purposefully set up. So this was a space where Irish people could show some solidarity with people in direct provision. People in direct provision could come and chat if they wanted to, could come and cook if they wanted to, and if they wanted to sit and chat with the wider Irish public. So this, after this event, we got such positive feedback and really, really good energy. Sorry, can I have the next slide, please? So these are some samples of our dishes, some beautiful Syrian mutabal here, some kind of tableau with different recipes of the bajila, which are African, quite like a falafel, but kind of made of bean. So we had a real variety of foods, some samosas, some different things. Can I have the next slide, please? Actually, this was another event we did, another lunch. So we did a few different events in different places around Dublin. Again, just bringing people together, whoever wanted to come from direct provision centres could come, cook, chat, eat, people could come and meet. And I suppose people can't work, just to go back to one kind of, I suppose, point. People aren't allowed work, but what we did is we tried to raise enough donations or money so that everyone's costs were completely covered. Obviously everyone ate and chatted and ate together, but also that everyone got a voucher at least leaving. So that was kind of our way of underhandedly making sure everyone's cost was covered and that they had a slightly productive day. Can I have the next? So after that 2-day event, we got a lot of people going, God, you should do more, you should do more. And again, for me at the initial setup was really about building awareness, and that was kind of my initial, that's what I thought I could bring to the table. And getting in the media, and we really did. We got on 6-1 News in Ireland, we didn't get on the Late Late Show, I'm here now. We got on Nationwide, which would be a really, really well watched Irish television show at about 7 o'clock in the afternoon. It was in every single mainstream newspaper. We were in quite a few radio stations, and myself and Lucky and Ellie were on quite a few radio chat show, kind of daytime radio chat shows. And they gave over. One, we went to Ray Darcy and we thought we were going to be on for 5 to 10 minutes, and he kept us there for 45 minutes, which was amazing. He was really, the story resonated with him. When he started talking with Ellie, started talking with Lucky, we chatted about food, we chatted about the lack of ability to pass on culture to your children, the desperate food that people are being served in direct provision, and the problems that leads to with mental health issues, with diabetes, with so many other issues that come with not having good nutrition for not just 1 year, but for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So next slide, please. So what we did some focus groups. Trinity College were very supportive, and they gave us some facilities and funding to do focus groups. And we chatted with people from DP centres all around Ireland, different communities. And they were saying that after you leave is actually kind of this horrible kind of other situation that happens, is that you have a blank CV. You generally haven't been able to work. You may not have availability to work in the same profession you did in your home country. So we tried to set up a space, a 3-month cafe, and it was a bit more like a training space for some young people who had been through direct provision and very recently left, or through the asylum process, and that they didn't really have access into, or the confidence sometimes, or the CV to get. So as anyone who's interested in the catering industry in Ireland, we just said we get an open call, we did interviews, and did quite a proper process of it. And we, 7 lads, started with us. And it was a daytime cafe, 10 to 11. Lucky was the manager, along with Elena, who's amazing. Fiona Corbett, who's here, who's been integral to the project from day one. Again, Ellie's here. I don't know if anyone, would you recognise Stephen Ray here? Yeah, Stephen Ray is quite a famous Irish actor who was been very supportive, continues to be very supportive. He launched the cafe on the first day. John Connors here is another Irish celebrity. Celebrity? I don't know if it's the right word. But yeah, he does some Irish TV programmes. He comes from the travelling community, a minority in Ireland, so he was very interested in our conversation. So he was there on the opening day. So this was just a launch day, I suppose. And we stayed for 3 months in an empty space, which was in the art centre in Temple Bar in Dublin. Cian, who's the director there, was very generous and just gave us the space to work in for those few months. And it was great. Again, I hope we created anyway, a really open space where people could come. People from centres did come and just chill and relax, because Dublin, like any city, is expensive to run a business in, so most places can't really afford for people to sit around when they're not buying or nothing. So this was a space where you didn't have to buy anything. You could come and sit there, you could relax, or you could buy coffee and chill. So there was just completely a mix of people coming in. It was quite busy. It was a real little hub for those 3 months that we did it there. And the next slide, please. Oh yeah, sorry, more just pictures. This is Aisha serving in the cafe. Vera in the background. Could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, I suppose that's a bit of a summary of our table so far. We've done smaller, different daily projects. We have done some one-day cooking events. Kula, actually, here, Vaari, I'm going to give you some baklava, the Kula Ali. Wonderful Syrian lady who's been doing a lot of our baking. There's one.
Thank you very much. And I think there's one of these for everyone in the audience.
There is some beautiful Syrian baklava made with homemade Irish milk cheese to a Syrian recipe. So Kula has done some baking classes with us. She did some baking workshops and just bringing people around the table cooking. So Kula did kind of orchestrated the class. Some other people from different countries and different DB centres came with her and were her kind of cooking aides. And then we invited people to come along. They learned how to cook these quite unusual Syrian recipes, and then sat down and all shared dinner together afterwards. So kind of simple ways of sharing food, simple ways of, you're going to have to dig in, sorry, I'm going to make you work for your, for your baklava. So it was just different ways of starting conversations around food, and hoping that the food that we share and the food that we cook together will just open conversations. And again, using the media, so I suppose there's different aspects to the project, but definitely manipulating the media as much as we could and using them to our ends, and to get people righteously angry and annoyed at the system that's in place in our country. And I hope that we have done that over the past few months. I mean, for me, just on a personal level, you constantly question and critique, I suppose, everything that you do. I hope I do in life. So can I have the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, this is actually if anyone wants to listen any further. I thought the slide was in here. This, Kevin Brew, a really nice radio documentary maker from RTE, made a really nice, really sensitive, about 25-minute radio documentary. It's here on their website. But he followed us for about 4 months through the different projects and just interviewed people as they were cooking. And there's some really beautiful sounds of the cooking and the sizzling in the pan. And he just made a really sensitive little documentary, and it's on the national radio if anyone does want to download a podcast. So the next slide, please. So this is a text I got from Ellie, which, you know, we are very proud and Very, very proud of the work that has been created through our table, the connections, the friendships that are made. There's been an awful lot of friendships made. And there is now, in 2 direct provision centres, there's a right to cook. But I'm very wary, again, this is kind of, I suppose, the critique from my point of view, that, you know, you're always kind of, are we helping prop up a system, and the government now saying that, oh God, you know, people can cook and that's it, and now we've done our job. And from my point of view, and I think from everyone on our table's point of view, it's not. Can I have the next slide, please? It's not, we're not here to help the government prop up a system that we think is abhorrent. You know, our table, one and only mission is that the system needs to end. And I do hope that some politicians have come and, you know, got their photos taken on the cafe counter and smiling at all of us. But I just really want to, from my point of view, just reiterate, I suppose, to myself and to everyone else that just sellotaping over a system that's completely wrong and allowing people to cook in 1 or 2 situations and kind of saying, oh, we've got the job done because you're creating this noise in the corner and we want you to stop creating noise, is not our aim. Our aim is that the system should not be happening, and it is the Magdalen laundries of the future. For an Irish person, it is something that we're going to be ashamed of and embarrassed of, and we are now, but we will definitely be more so, I think, in the future. So our aim from our table is always to end direct provision, and while trying to get towards that aim, to create a community, to create food and to share food together. And yeah, I hope that we've done that and bring our stories together around a table. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I was going to go to a break, but I think we're actually running quite short of time. So it leaves a little bit of time for discussion at the end there. I want to hear from Marcus, who's representing Almy Gurt, who's invited here today by the artist Seamus Nolan. And I'll explain to you Seamus's connection back to Marcus's project.
Hi everybody. Hi. Thanks.
Yeah, you just explain.
Oh, well, you know more about it.
To explain Seamus's. So the link to Seamus Nolan is that Seamus has been working with the Barricades project, which is a squatting project in Dublin, and there's a lot of kind of issues around squatting in Ireland. It's not very organised. It doesn't function in the way that squatting functions, maybe even in the UK. And there are a lot of illegal raids on squatting. Rental accommodation and the housing market are in deep, deep crisis in Ireland at the moment. There are a lot of empty homes that were built during the boom, during what we call the Celtic Tiger. Those homes remained empty, were knocked to the ground, and now there's another build-up of a huge housing crisis in Ireland. And there are all kinds of suggestions as to how this might be alleviated. But yesterday, the Central Bank in Ireland just released the statistics for the average first-time buyer who will have €50,000 as a deposit, will be on an average of almost €70,000 a year before you can begin, and will be 35 before they can begin to think about buying a home. The rental market in Ireland doesn't operate or function in the same way as it does throughout the rest of Europe, and that it's not a normal thing to rent. It's much more normal, considered a much more normal thing to buy. And the rental market now has just become exorbitant, so we're facing into huge homelessness crisis in Ireland right now. And so Seamus Nolan's practice a lot of times is to work with institutions in implicating them in a process of what he wants to make a political critique of protest. And so that sometimes they can become so embedded as the site of that protest that they begin to become the people who represent the process, and it resulted in things like the Project Art Centre having to go on RTE and represent Seamus in a project that he went where they were displaying hammers, which were actually objects used in criminal acts in Shannon Airport, in what they call the Swords for Ploughshares movement, so breaking down components of airplanes that were about to leave to go to war. And that's Seamus's process of operating. How this relates to this project is that Seamus was following the Barricades project that Marcus will tell us a little bit more about. And at the same time received a phone call from the Irish Museum of Modern Art, an urgent phone call from the collections department. So he didn't answer, he didn't get through to them. So he's been trying to call them back ever since and find out what the urgent moment is, but what he's decided that he's going to do with this matter of urgency from the collections department of the Irish Museum of Modern Art is to sell the roof of the old Barricades building to the Irish Museum of Modern Art as an artwork. And this comes out of a campaign that they've been building, a Kickstarter campaign to fix and buy a new roof for their building. So Marcus, do you want to just talk a little bit more into that?
So, hey, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about squatting in Dublin and what it looks like and kind of where it came from. For anybody that doesn't know, what squatting is kind of occupying unused spaces, wherever we do it in Dublin. And so in 2008, the property market in Ireland completely collapsed, and that left this situation where the government set up an agency called NAMA, the National Assets Management Agency, to buy up all the toxic properties of bankers and large property holders across the country. And something that was in that clause that said that it was okay to do that was that in like the NAMA statement, it said that any of those spaces could be turned into public spaces. They could be turned into playgrounds, they could be turned into anything that people could use. And to my knowledge, not one of those was ever used for anything other than to hold on to and sell to vulture funds later on. So in about 2011, 2012, a group of us thought we were just really sick of it. We were really sick at seeing these properties rotting all over the city, all over the country, and these ghost estates that got built all over the country, which were housing estates built for what was going to be a population boom that never came. So there's just half-finished, giant, horrible housing estates all over the country. So, so our solution to that seemed quite simple, to take these empty buildings and to take all the people that we could think of that really needed space, whether it was for a place to live or a place to do art or music or to do whatever it is that they needed to do. And we got together and we started occupying large buildings. And what you're seeing behind you is one of our most successful projects, which was called Grange Gorman, which was an old industrial complex right in the middle of the city centre in a place called Stony Batter. It was 3 large warehouses and about 6 buildings with a large courtyard that you're seeing. And we occupied it for on and off for about 3 years. At one stage we were evicted, and then we kind of reoccupied the place afterwards. But that became this kind of unbelievable cultural hub. We had no idea what we were creating, and it all kind of happened under our feet. But we thought we were just going to get away with maybe opening a small house and being able to do paintings in it, and then we occupied this space. And over the years, about 50 to 70 people lived in there. They built some of their own homes, like just on the space that was there. Other people lived inside the buildings. We hosted the International Squatters Convergence there, and there was always activity there, and there was always love, and there was a number of events that came out of it, like Words in the Warehouse and various things like that. So yeah, these are pictures of that space. It's been demolished now to build student accommodation for the Grange Gorman DIT site that's just up the road. So that's great. I guess people are going to be living there, but yeah, it was left empty for a long time. The Barricade was a project that we started 2 summers ago on Parnell Street, and it was a hotel that had been inherited by a woman who had died, and the property was in holding by this company of solicitors who had gone in, and it was a protected building because some people from the Irish Revolution had stayed there the night before, and that's where they kept their guns. And so it was a protected building, and so the solicitors had gone in and they'd arranged with some builders, and they built this system. They built a hole in the roof and then made a system of, I don't know, like chutes or slides to take all the water that came off the roof and to put it into the center of the building so it would start to collapse. So it would have to be knocked down, and the government would I don't know, they were going to be able to rebuild something there, because the way it was, they couldn't do anything with the property. So yeah, we squatted that for summer, and that was an incredibly successful project. We had a library and an art space, a bike workshop, a cafe, and all the money that was made through donations for that space were taken and put into a central fund that was used to help people, to continue squatting in Dublin, and to whatever projects that we felt needed the money as well, like I'm sure art table and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years, is making sure that those buildings can be occupied, helping people who want to do that, living there, and trying to do our best with what we have. I'm really happy with the work we've been doing. Over the last year, there's been a lot more illegal evictions. So the legal process of squatting in Ireland is that it's not really legal and it's not illegal. If you're inside an occupied building and whoever owns the building isn't inside that property, the people who are inside it have a very, very loose form of legal title, where if they barricaded themselves in there and nobody can get them out, then the only way things can move forward is through the courts. And so that, that's how it goes. And then a judge can grant an injunction, and then the police can come and remove you physically. That doesn't really happen. When an injunction is granted, we leave. That's the law. We're happy to follow the law most of the time. So we'll leave when that's the case. But more and more what's been happening is that the police will just turn up with a grudge and illegally evict people. They'll go in pepper spraying, and arresting, and people will be dragged, I don't know, around or whatever. They might go down to the police station. Nobody ever gets charged. Nothing, no criminal charges ever come from it. It's just to get us out of the building. So, I mean, I'm sure the people who, in many cases, I think that's been fair enough. We've definitely made some mistakes and squatted some buildings that we shouldn't have, but the majority of the places that we've squatted over the last 5 years across the country have all been with good intention and have brought something positive to the area. Grange Gorman was in one of the roughest parts of the city that I've ever lived in, and there's and over the years that we were there, so many neighbours came to us and said that we'd helped the area kind of become a bit safer, and we'd brought some joy and colour to an area that had been kind of forgotten and abandoned. It was an area that had been gentrified, so all the buildings had been sold and emptied, so that the DIT could buy them up and turn them into a new college campus, which is great, but the whole area suffered because of that position where buildings were being bought for nobody to live in, and it was awful. So yeah, we were there for a couple of years. At the end of our first eviction, some really great stuff happened. We ended up on Al Jazeera News because there was some violence involved, and the mayor came down to kind of see what we were up to and was really happy with it. A local priest came down to see what we were up to and was really happy with it. But the most powerful thing that happened, I don't have a picture, I'm afraid, but a teacher was giving out to a kid in a local school saying, why are you late back to class? What were you up to out there with everybody? So I go, I was nothing. And I was, what's that behind your back? And so the kid produces a kind of it was called Save Our Squatters, and it was a petition to get all the local kids to sign it. That this one 7-year-old kid had started to get the other kids to sign it. So the teacher was so moved by it that she ended up bringing it around school for anybody else that wanted to sign it, and we got this through our letterbox one day, which was a piece of paper with 200 names on it of people we'd never met. We're far younger than but they were impressed with our work because we really tried to brighten things up, and that's what we're going to keep trying to do. The last thing that's going to happen here, is that right, Peter? Is just a speech about you know, how we felt at the end of one of the evictions, and yeah, hear that.
After what? Private interest, of course. Private rubbing fingers on private. What if we said that it just doesn't apply? Down here in the muck and the dust where we're trying to get by. Head first and heart first we provide, guided by each other's lives, and in all the darknesses of today and the unknown chasm of tonight. The word of the law rings in our ears like all the bells of antiquity as the laughter of nature, unruly, truly, cackling with mountainous force at this moral dictum, so vastly removed from the heart we built with pallets and the blood, our blood running through it. This community exists on its own terms.
Thanks.
I know I keep going on about it, but you can't leave the Catholic Church anymore once you're baptised. And because a few years ago there was huge rate of people wanting to leave because of all the stuff that was coming out,
I remember,
press and stuff. And there was a website you could go to that made it relatively straightforward to leave the church, and the church got wind of it. And they changed the law. They said once you're baptised, you're Catholic for life. They locked the gate. So it's like, but I was looking at it recently, and there's a Latin term for it. I can't remember what it is, but it's automatic excommunication. And it happens. There's only a few ways you can be automatically excommunicated. First one is if you have an abortion or you aid somebody having an abortion. If you steal the Eucharist, the wafer.
From where now?
From the priest, I suppose, or the church. And you use it for sacrilegious purposes. Stick it up your arse, I don't know. I don't care.
Right.
Or if you punch the Pope. That's seriously one of them, if you punch the Pope.
Okay, Sam.
Now the one I'd be going for, he's an okay Pope, but he's still the Pope. And it's just, isn't this so wonderful that you can punch the Pope?
Okay, thank you everyone for coming to a late night show this evening. To all of our guests, to Marcus, to Michelle, to Lucky, to Tina and to Sam, thank you very much. A little bit under the weather, but he's done a great job. To Shannon, our drummer. We'd like to thank you very much. We'd like to thank Culture Ireland for funding us to be here, and Colin Talbot from the RTE Archives for helping us with research. And
thank you, Vaari.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Annie and to the vanabbemuseum and Abbemuseum.
I need to go to the bathroom.
Okay. Don't forget to turn your microphone on. Yeah, anybody has any questions? I'm no longer the host.
I'll scrap the mic here. Thank you so much for sharing with us on such an amazing level, so many complicated layers around this idea of refuge and false friends. It was really interesting and amazing, so really appreciate all the effort. Could you talk a little bit, Vaari, about the format and about the idea of Resistance is Fertile and what you're trying to do? Because this is not the first time you set up this kind of ongoing and very complex performance moment.
No, I mean the format initially. Can you hear me without the mic?
No.
Yeah.
It would be good to have.
It's nice to record.
Okay.
I can hand this to you
then. Yeah, so I have used this format a little bit of the chat show as a way to kind of pull in popular culture and the ways that we receive certain kinds of information, and as a way to kind of undermine that to a certain extent and look at the way that certain kinds of information are received or are broadcast in Ireland, particularly through the sort of national broadcast system, and how that underscores a lot of the so-called truths and beliefs about the state and about the Catholic Church. And we really, we only saw a very small amount of the footage that there is in the archives about RIARC, which was essentially set up as a way to train priests and nuns to have control of the kind of means of production of television. And there's another interesting section in this which I didn't read out, which essentially says, fund these things. It's your duty, if you have a relationship to the Catholic Church, to pour funding in. It's your duty that there is no lack of resources on the part of the Catholic Church when there are other resources going into these kinds of persuasive media like television. So I think that was partly what we were thinking about, what Sam and I began to think about in relation to this sort of chacha, which I borrowed from, I'd taken from a previous project that I did called Laugh of Defiance with Mason Libriab, and they and I came together to look at how women are in media, these kind of accepted ideas around the presentation of women in media, and so we just took that format to here to kind of keep it alive and how information is going to spread across. But the wider project is really something that has a lot of support and no structure and not really a beginning to it yet, so this is why we're starting with step one. I had pulled together, and it's interesting that there's a crossover between some of those people and your project Internationale, and that the Irish Museum of Modern Art, the National Gallery in Warsaw, the CCA in Vaari, the Kunstwerken in Graz, and these people are coming together to partner with us in a way to look at finding moments of shelter. And as I began to think of the idea of Ireland as a place of shelter, I began to realise how horrific the history of shelter was in Ireland. And that was really how this beginning project came about, that there's just so much repair required, even in the terms that we use, the language that we use around those things. Everything is contested, everything is contestable. There's one of the things that came out today was just the degree of sorrow, how horrifying a lot of these stories are. And that even to place ourselves in this relationship to any other nation as a place that can actually offer refuge becomes really difficult and becomes really complicated. And so instead, I think I began to look at thinking about it as a process whereby we could begin to think together to look at what those situations specifically are and what they generate and what kind of how we can produce into situations of danger and what kind of strategies we can use around that, because so much of the time, again, the other situation of emergency in Ireland is the situation for directors of cultural institutions. Lots of times women, lots of times utterly unprotected because of the way the governance structures operate. We won't get into that because it's all that's another lot of stories. But it's the systems that we use to help one another to keep producing, to keep protesting, that we don't have burnout, we don't have exhaustion, we can carry on a battle, we can hand over ego, and then it comes in again to a question that I've been thinking about a lot, which I wanted to begin talking to in relation to this, is what we call reputational labour, the thing that we need to do in order to keep prominent, to keep our own reputation going, so that we can actually achieve within our own industry, and how much time and energy has to go into one of those things. And so if we start to look at reputation as a different thing, or we start to look at acting in other ways, how much time would we save to actually be working, and how much time is going to be lost to the management of the reputation? I mean, it's maybe an overcomplicated answer to your question.
Not at all. It's just, I know it's a very fruitful, I find it a very fruitful model, and I'm just really interested to see where
and so this is really I'm calling it step one, because as soon as we begin to produce something, it starts to not become mine anymore. So I see it as a whole series of steps that I'll identify. Only ever the next step, probably.
Are there 12 steps?
No, that's a no.
Maybe that's for
Sam. It's an atheist program. So.
Do we have some other questions, comments from the floor? Be nice.
I'm from Australia, and I was sitting here watching some of the statistics and the relationship between policy and strategy that you're working through that intersect between different issues, obviously, around the same governance system. And I was wondering how much... I've lived away from Australia for more than 10 years, and art, like cultural spaces, are places where issues get translated into other locations, and there's always a question mark when you're talking about the politics of the state that you're addressing. This relationship between taking information out and then taking it back, and to what extent. I mean, it definitely makes a difference for people to see that the state is being discussed outside of the state, right? And by serious people that they respect in culture, because it is this place of reputation. And in order to maintain a reputation, you do need to keep up with the discourse. And so when the discourse is that political, you know, there is this extremely fine line between symbolic and material politics, right? And in, you know, thinking about detention and asylum in particular, a lot of the action that has made a difference in changing the appearance of support, or the extent to which the state listens to resistance, has come from movements that are attached to movements outside of Australia, or you know, investee activism against against corporations that are making money from the system. I'm just wondering how much, and this is my question, how much you're actually thinking through, or with other activists in other states, close to you or foreign. So, for example, I know the Australian asylum policy is an inspiration for the EU and for the UK, and probably for Ireland. How much you're in conversation with people struggling against the same negative inspiration, basically.
You want to answer that in the first instance, so I can a little bit about your network?
As to how much we are in contact with the colleagues in Australia,
or the UK, or anywhere, just in terms of sharing strategies.
Yeah, well, we do share, especially with the colleagues in the UK, in terms of what the processes are there, and especially in the Northern Ireland, we've got a group that we constantly visit each other from Belfast to understand whatever is happening, and then we share from that point of view, because we believe that our struggles are really connected, and yeah, we do gain a lot from each other. We haven't in terms of Australia, but with UK, yes, we are connecting with them. Yeah.
Vaari, I would ask the same question of you a little bit.
I'm just, I mean, one of the most sort of clear examples in recent times that we've been working around is working closely with Poland. And there have been strategies of protest around different situations, like around abortion and the provision of abortion, because there's a sort of backslide in provision in Poland, and they went on strike, they went on an all-out strike. And a group of young artists in Ireland just took that model, like really directly from Poland, because there's this huge idea of a notion of a sisterhood. There's a huge Polish population. I mean, maybe do you want to speak to that also? If you do, you're very welcome. And then there was this quite organised idea around striking for repeal, and at the moment. What the repeal movement is doing, because it might be some time before there's a referendum, there's a lot of activity around what they're calling community building, and that goes, that's informed a lot by the kinds of actions that are taken in Poland, which has got some kind of parallel history to post-Catholic country, but also there's a lot of Polish people in Ireland, and there was a lot of assumptions earlier that the Polish population in Ireland would be the ones who vote the most conservatively in relation to things like divorce and abortion, and it's really not so. Instead, it's actually the Polish people so the Irish people would have held vigils around the strike in Poland for Polish women's rights, and vice versa. There's a lot of kind of communication with them. So I'm working with the Polish curator now on this project to try to make an open channel, because there's really like huge minority population of Poles in Ireland. There's very little programming that happens, for example, in Polish. I've done some Polish programming, but it's really very meagre.
Yeah, question?
When I look at the different stories or problems, I see all the time people getting crushed by the system, and the rest of the people who support the system do not want to know that. They want to stay convinced that the system is fair and nice, and they want to stay in a secure and predictable life. And I'm afraid that many people will just do not want to listen to this. It's too painful. They will not. They just want to look away. And also there's little hope. And when you say, okay, we have the table, and so we have a little bit of humanity brought inside, it doesn't give hope.
No, I know. I'm aware it looks very dark.
Yeah.
And I think it's, Martina, I'm going to hand over to you now. Like one of the things that happened really recently in Ireland was there was a marriage referendum for making a gay marriage legal in Ireland. And this was a huge moment where there was a lot of tears around it. And the quote was, "We never win. It never happens to us. We're always the losers."
They
in this
did
kind of
win.
situation. We won 2 years ago.
But it's not only Ireland. I mean, it's the Netherlands.
No, but there are. I mean, I think that there are. It was more so in Ireland. There was a lot of complacency. I mean, Tina, do you want to speak to this in terms of the kinds of protests that are happening? The death of Savita Halapana. There's some very tragic moments that really are, and the repeal movement is huge in Ireland. Oh, so.
But maybe my question would be: is it, can artists make it more visible, or people more ready to want to look at these kind of things? Because I'm not sure if it's how to put it.
I suppose something myself and Vaari and a few other people who would be writers or thinkers.
Maybe just take we can just share the mic.
Yeah.
That's all.
And people that are trying to live as well and earn a living, but a few group of us have got together and done a few, people that maybe think a bit creatively and work together quite creatively, and we've gotten together and made a few projects that we can pass on to bigger organisations, so we can feed our project on amongst a smaller group of us into bigger organisations, for example, that are working on behalf of reproductive rights. And in that way, I suppose, it's not that I don't think any of us feel particularly that it's important for us to be at the forefront of what we've done. It's like the creative thinking that goes into the action that can be rolled out by a body is really the important thing. And I think that you would probably find that behind a lot of activist groups or advocacy groups, there are artists and thinkers working behind the scenes, feeding stuff into them so that to raise awareness around issues in creative ways. One of the things that we did recently in our group, because this new National Maternity Hospital, or maybe I should say, does everybody know what the 8th Amendment is? Because I've mentioned it a few times. Okay. So the 8th Amendment was an amendment that was inserted into the Irish Constitution. And when something's inserted into the Constitution, the only way to take it out of the Constitution is to have a referendum, another referendum. And it was 40.33 of the Irish Constitution it was inserted into, which basically equates the life of the unborn with the life of the pregnant woman. And the unborn is unqualified, actually. In law, we're not sure whether the unborn is the point of conception or the point of implantation. So at the moment we live with a situation in Ireland where there is no access to abortion unless the life of the pregnant woman is directly under threat and of course that's not always a clear-cut situation, or if somebody is suicidal. And in the case of Savita Halapanavana, who Vaari mentioned, she was a doctor from India, a dentist rather, from India that had come to live in Ireland, was pregnant, was happily pregnant, but she was suffering a miscarriage, and she went to the hospital and became increasingly sick, and she asked for the contents of her womb to be removed because she was only going to miscarry, and they couldn't remove, and they wouldn't perform an abortion on her because the fetus's heart was still beating, even though she knew this. She clearly had an intuition it was a threat to her life, and she got sepsis and died. And there've been, I don't know how many more tragic cases to go over today. We had, just last year, we had the case of a young girl who had come to Ireland seeking asylum, who had been raped and didn't know she was pregnant when she arrived in Ireland, was put in touch with healthcare services, but was clearly traumatised. I think she was 17 when she came to Ireland, and developed suicidal ideation around her condition. But basically she was kept pregnant, where she could have availed of an abortion in Ireland under the current legislation, if she was suicidal and proven to be suicidal, and I think you have to prove that to 3 doctors.
But she was actually incarcerated.
She was incarcerated, she was force-fed and forcibly operated on with a cesarean section at 22 weeks. It was 24 weeks. So this is the kind of situation that we're literally currently operating under, and clearly women with means, although it's still traumatic, women with means can travel to have reproductive health care, but somebody in direct provision has absolutely no access to travel under any means whatsoever. So that's the situation we're currently dealing with. Does that answer the...
Well, the question is in relation to artist responses.
Yeah, the artists in that sense would have been very responsive in the marches that followed Savita Halapanavana's death. The National College of Art and Design made the banners, which really became a kind of, like a recurring visual motif that one would remember artists being involved with. There's an artist repealed to artist campaign to repeal the 8th. Poets have read out poems. There's been a kind of an ongoing artistic engagement, I would say, but a kind of like that, kind of a taking up of creative artistic strategies on behalf of advocacy groups.
My question is, you already have to be very brave to. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. You have to be brave to face all this. Is it enough to just do something when there's a lot of danger, that you're actually only doing something for your own comfort, for your own conscience, and not really changing too much? What would be enough?
Well, it's
a difficult question. I can't answer. Sorry.
It's good to have multiple questions. Do you have any other thoughts or comments from today?
Where's the drunken guy?
Yeah, where's the drunk?
So he's gone for a drink.
Well, that is Sam Keogh, who is a wonderful artist based in Amsterdam at the moment, and indeed, as Vaari said, Sam is the first artist in residence in this project. And we'll all eat together now, hopefully. Everybody's, in a few minutes, so hopefully Sam will have recovered sufficiently to come back. Okay, Nick, I'll take one more question.
No, it's just in response to what you were saying, and to try and link it back to some other discussions in the caucus, actually, because on Saturday, Sunday, Kojo, Eshen, Saturday, Kojo Eshen was here. And then afterwards at dinner we were talking, we were kind of reflecting on some of the days so far, and we were talking about the first Friday, and here is Ken's Mill in relation to the Dutch Surinamese community here, and we were reflecting a little bit on also the Black Art movement in the 80s in Britain. And he started talking really nicely about the need to have, or the kind of pincer movement, he described it, in relation to activism and artistic work. He said you can't have one without the other, and you can't necessarily, it doesn't always help to coordinate the two, but the two groups always need to be aware of the others. Yeah, and there needs to be the activist work, this really dirty organisational political work, but there needs to be the intellectual, aesthetic, cultural production that happens at the same time. And when those two things are aware of each other and convergence happens, then it has public shape, it has theoretical work and intellectual work. So I think in kind of thinking through those kind of things, I'd say that the artistic cultural work, whilst it might not produce the immediate results, is absolutely necessary for this pincer movement to be carried out.
Thank you.
He suggested the odd riot isn't a bad idea.
Yes.
The riots are good for you.
Okay, do we have any more comments, questions? Okay, well then I just...
I
you
want
do.
to say thank you to Rhoda, Peter.
Exactly, and Jerome. Yeah, thank you so much.